Right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to World of Warships. I am Passive Gaming, and I'm here to just kind of give some basic tips and tricks for people just getting into this game. So this game is available on Steam. It is made by the same people who make World of Tanks, wargaming.net, and it's basically a ship-on-ship combat simulator. So I'm going to go through the basics, like the basic layout of the menu here, and then I'm going to do the basics of naval combat as well, because there are definitely some things that I've seen that people do in this game that don't really make much sense. So, starting out, so this is the main shipyard. Of course, you can change which shipyard you're at by pressing this green button in the top, and you can then set the port you would like. I also quite like St. Petersburg. It's nice, it's a bit of a quiet one. London is a bit of a strange one, but St. Petersburg seems to be, you know, very typically Russian. Da comrade. But yes, so this is the main port, and now this is the HMS Weymouth. So, we can then look at some of the trees, I guess. So across the top here you have port, modules, tech tree, and profile. So currently this is the port view, which is just a picture of your ship. When you click modules, it then allows you to have a look at what your ship has attached to it. So with the Weymouth, which is a tier 2 British cruiser, you have the main battery, which only comes in one version, which is the 152mm 45 PVI main battery. You have two hull options. So the initial hull has 1900 attack points and only one AA mount, whereas the Type 2 hull, or the B type hull, has 20,000 attack points and 2 AA mounts. However, AA mounts don't really become useful until we get around the time where we have carriers. So it also has two gun control systems. The Mod 2 over the Mod 1 has a 10% firing range increase, and the main which means the main battery firing range is 11.6 kilometers compared to 10.6 kilometers on the initial one, and it has a 22,000 horsepower engine, which gives you a maximum speed of 26 knots. So this is the basics of kind of the module section. When you get later in the game, you get extra consumables like special types of ammunition, so you can get high explosive ammunition, incendiary ammunition. So then, dependent on what ships you're going up against, you can then change the load that you have. You can then change what rounds you're loading to do more damage to specific ships. So, for example, if you're going up against a battleship, very heavily armoured, the standard armor-piercing rounds normally do quite well. But if you're going up against a lighter ship, like a destroyer, then high explosives may be more useful, because they have more stuff that's mounted kind of on top of the ship, like torpedo tubes, which high explosive do a lot of damage to. Now, as the standard consumable, you get Damage Control Party, which auto resupplies for free, and has a 90-second reload time. Whenever you take damage, so for example you get hit in the bow and your rudder, you get hit in the stern and your rudder's out of action, you can't turn, you could just hit R, and then over a period of time that will be repaired, and then you have turning again. So let's have a look at the tech tree. My one pet peeve about this game is that the UK only have 2 lines of ships, so I will go to the USA, which has a full line of ships. So in the USA, you start off with the cruisers. So you start off with the USS Ire and the and then you move on to the Chester, which then gives you access to the destroyers. Now, from the standard cruisers, which are just your standard ships with heavy guns and AA defense, destroyers also have access to torpedo tubes, as seen here. Now, these torpedo tubes are extremely good at taking out large ships because they can do immense amounts of damage to it in one hit. However, it does come at a cost that they move very slowly and are quite easy to dodge, which requires you getting quite up close and personal with the large ship, which normally means that they can hit you quite easily. The destroyers also don't have very high survivability, but they do have very high concealment, so you have to get quite close to see them. Back to the tech tree. Battleships. Now, battleships are the big brothers of cruisers. Battleships very often are... I mean, they're basically the same as cruisers, they're just a lot bigger and deal a lot more damage. But they are a lot slower, and also a lot bigger. The bigger the target, the easier it is to hit, especially from further range, where they're going to have more difficulty hitting you, if you're a cruiser or destroyer. These are normally quite easy targets for torpedoes, especially the early ones, because they are so very slow. I mean, the second one only gives you... I mean, the top tier engine for this only gives you a speed of 18 knots. Which means that it is quite easy for a destroyer to get reasonably close to it, put a good prediction on where it's going to be, and hit it with a torpedo. It also has quite a poor turning rate, which isn't one of the mods, but at full turn port or starboard, it's not going to be turning very quickly, so they aren't exactly manoeuvrable. They're more kind of designed for stationary turrets, getting yourself in a broadside position, and dealing a heck of a lot of damage to the ships. And finally, we have the carriers. This is the USS Langley. As you can see, this is a very early bore carrier, just by the biplanes. Carriers have the ability to send out aircraft, so they don't tend to have their own what word am I looking for? They don't tend to have their own armaments. They might have AA in the late game. Oh, do they even have AA in this? Does this have AA? Okay, so this has this on the second tier body does have AA. But the standard version doesn't. So carriers are quite susceptible to damage from other carriers unless they have other fighters, like with this, for example, the Boeing F4B and later the Grumman F3F, which does mean that this aircraft was used into the early Second World War. But of course, these are also very slow. Its maximum speed is only 15 knots and only has an engine of 8,000 horsepower, which means that these are extremely big targets for destroyers with torpedoes. However, these then are classed as what in naval terms capital ships, which is basically where you would have the capital ship being this carrier or a battleship, which the other cruisers and the destroyers would then kind of base themselves around, defend the battleship, let it deal a bunch of damage, and then try and break off any damage that's coming towards it. So, we've looked at the tech tree, we've looked at the models, let's look at the profile section. This is where you see all of your kind of the stats that you have. So this is mine for co-op battle, which is what you would have initially. You then unlock random battle, I think level 3. So co-op battle is you and other people versus AI ships, and it shows all of the stats that you have here, so the amount of battles I've played, the amount of victories, the amount of battles I've survived, the gun accuracy, contribution to capture and defense, damage caused to ships, XP earned, average warships destroyed, average damage, most. So it's quite useful information for comparison of how you work. There's also achievements. So I don't have any. Oh no, I do have achievements. So I have initial capital, which is earn 100,000 credits, and I have junior naval designer, which is research a new ship. However, there are a lot more here. A lot of them are based around doing stuff within battles, but others are. So, for example, I can get naval constructor, which is research 10 ships, and then Naval Chief Architect 50 ships. This is all about capital down here as well, some about receiving crates, but most of them are earned within the game. However, I wouldn't really recommend hunting these because it may then distract you from actually playing in the game. So, my service record, as you can see, on this account I'm a level 3, very close to level 4, at which level 4 I unlock containers. Now, containers are like loot boxes in Overwatch. You get them for completing challenges or leveling up or researching a new ship, and they contain consumables or money or extra research. Especially free research is especially useful. So, if we have a quick look at the bottom here, you can see I have the HMS Weymouth, which is the Tier 2 cruiser for the UK. But if I look at the HMS Black Swan, which is the Tier 1, it now has this laurel around it, here. This means it is an elite ship. Now, elite ships when you use these, they earn they earn free XP. So, I haven't fought with this since it was an elite ship, but any XP that I earn with this, I could also then, in theory, use on the Weymouth, or the Hashidate, or the Aya, or the Orlan, the Hamlin, the Chengan, or the Bougainville. Of course, I'm not going to use the Bougainville because it's French. Yeah. So, this was the quick kind of overlay of the menu system in this game. No, it's not. I'm not done. So, up here, selecting a mission. Would very much recommend doing this. It gives you a good teach of kind of the basic controls, but it doesn't go into any of the advanced stuff. You start off with co-op battle, which is fighting against bots, and then random battle, which is fighting against others. Now, onto divisions. Divisions are like groups that you can make. So if you're in a battle, someone plays very well, they're nice within the game, you can invite them to a division, which means that you queue together for the next round, or however many rounds you play after that while in division. It's all kind of pretty cushy. Now, if I go up to here to my account, you can see that there is premium and clans. So premium is kind of how Wargaming make their money. This is a free game. Premium, just like any other premium service, is subscription based and gives you access to the elite ships. If I go to a tech tree, so you can see the HMS Nelson, which is what, a tier 6 battleship, or the HMS Hood, which entered service in 1920, which is also a tier 6 tier 7 battleship, apologies, and you can buy that with the limited premium doubloons instead of just researching it like a normal person. So that's kind of the basic overlay of this. So I'm going to record the kind of the battle kind of thing immedially after this. So, I mean, if you want more kind of tutorial videos like this, maybe some advanced tactics stuff, yeah, just tell me in the comments. I've been Ed for PT Gaming. Fuck, PT Gaming doesn't exist anymore, Ed. I've been Ed for Passive Gaming. Thank you very much for watching. Ta-ra.